It's a difficult life. You want that romantic success. We want it. This show is a lot about us trying to make it, trying to look for that. And the idea of fame, I personally don't care for it. I know that sounds funny, but I really don't.
This is Hacking It with Dan Allen and Robert Cavalier.
And we're back. Let's do this again with Hacking It. So hello, fellow hack writers. You know who you are. Here we are with Dan and Robert Cavalier. How's it going, Dan?
Trying to stay warm here in the cold tundra.
Well, I've got something to warm you up. Today's topic is, so you want to be a screenwriter, do you? I'm excited about this because who hasn't dreamt of about writing and having that material become, dramatized in a movie? I mean, some writers, I don't know who, but some writers consider that, like, especially when we're daydreaming about it, kind of like the epitome, the real apex of, man, my novel got made into a movie. I personally don't think that, but I can relate to that. I think it would be exciting. So we're going to talk about one of the things that we've talked over the years and kind of jokingly even in the past with this podcast is, don't just write when you watched a movie that makes you feel like a writer and you're just doing it because you watched a movie. But really rather try to develop a daily habit of it, or a habit that is consistent enough, even if it's not daily, that you're thinking about it. And we do talk about that in our upcoming book, which is called
Manifest Your Story in 21 Days.
Here you go. So look out for that. Just want to plug that in because why not? It's our show, so we can plug stuff in. Okay. Excited about it. A lot of work. Dan put a lot of work, and I put a lot of ideas, a lot of crazy ideas. But so speaking of movies, I kind of had my own little stash of movies that I gathered through the years that I bought through Amazon because, why not? It's so easy to buy things on Amazon, right? So, and I realized I kind of made a little bit of a inadvertent collection of movies where either a writer was the focus of the plot, or maybe it was about a real writer in it. So some of them are kind of tangential. I mean, the Ghost Rider, I enjoyed this movie, and it's with our Star Wars master here, but it's a thriller, and he's a ghostwriter, and there's stuff that he's doing in publishing houses and stuff. And really, tangentially, I'll admit that I didn't really care about the movie all that much. I just wanted to see a writer in the writing settings. So there's a Factotum, which is a Chinaski character by Bukowski, a famous novel, wonderful novel, really recommend it, really thin. That guy is a poet of the streets. You got to read him. This is a great movie. Especially if you're a hack writer that you don't think is ever going to be published, because that's the theme of this movie. He's a guy pretty much living in LA, trying to publish and sending off his poems and his short stories and his novels, and getting rejected all the time, and drinking in bars, and he's a barfly. It's an exciting movie. I'm not going to go through all the movies because it would eat up too much time, but I do want to get Dan's reaction at any of these if he's want. This is my favorite, by the way. Start down in the evening. It is about a writer who is at the end of his writing life in a way, and then he gets reinvigorated, maybe because of a younger, pretty lady that comes into his life, or maybe because of other things. And he's got a whole writer's studio. He's got an office with, it's not even in his house. He's literally got an office. Like, wow, that's a real writer. And in the movie, I believe the actor is Minghella, and he's it's Frank Minghella. It's just an amazing actor who doesn't usually get starring roles. He gets strong supporting roles. This movie, I'm gonna gift it to you at some point. Heck, it's still in the original packaging. I haven't watched it, but I think I streamed it, and that's why I didn't bother to open it. But a great movie, of course. This is mentioned in the famous 20 Manifest Your Destiny in 21 Days. I'm kidding. Manifest Your Story in 21 Days. And kind of as a joke, I actually really like this movie too.
Fanning Forrester, it's a good one.
And then this one is pretty bad movie, but I liked its honesty and what it was trying to do. And I recommend watching it just as an exercise in understanding how plots can get too convoluted, And even though best intentions are there, it may not pan out the way you expected. But I really do recommend, just if you're a writer and you like seeing writers, because we're narcissistic. Here's another one by Woody Allen. And this writer actually steals the plot. This guy steals a dying author's last manuscript and passes it on as his own. Son of a gun. An adaptation which is about the musings of twin brothers. I'm not entirely sure if one of them is real or not. One of them is kind of a knucklehead, but he's actually more successful, and the other one's a serious writer. But overcome. So a bit of a prop. I'm not gonna lie, but I do want us to be excited. Tell me, Dan, what kind of movies get your blood going?
So the one movie that is worth mentioning that you kind of left off of there is Murder 101, that also stars Pierce Brosnan, and it's about a mystery writer who gets involved in a murder mystery, and it kind of has a meta take on the genre, because at the very end of the movie, you realize that they've been making a movie about this writer who's involved in this murder plot all along. So it's interesting. It's fun. So that's Murder 101. As far as the movies you showed, if you are a writer and you're looking for some kind of, because we talked about the last thing you want to do as a writer is depend upon inspiration from a movie, and then you go and you become a great writer because you were inspired, and that's not the way to approach writing, because
it's not be so serious. Come on.
But
it's fun to get that little bit. I mean, you got to admit, and don't lie to me, that at some point, maybe we're I know that I've been in points in my life in years ago where not a lot of writing was getting done. And then it's sort of like you bump into a movie, and I believe like Odom did it for me too. We're like, you know what? Yeah, get back on the old typewriter, you know? It's not entirely bad. It's a little peccadillo, but I think it's fun. And I do want to emphasize that, of course, we're very serious writers. We're serious. But we don't want to be so serious that we also don't have fun and make fun of ourselves. I think that, unless you don't agree, Dan.
Well, no, that's why adaptation is so great, because it totally, I have not seen that one. Looking forward to that. I'll give you my thoughts on that. But adaptation, basically, it satirizes the writer, makes fun of the writer, shows how it's kind of a stupid thing. It's ridiculous. It's not made for cinema, and that's why that's such a great movie, because the screenwriter and the director are very aware of that fact, and they indulge in the fact that a writer's life is very unromantic, very unexciting, and it has its own weird challenges, and you get so inside of your head that
today on the podcast, Dan and Robert get into verbal fisticuffs. No, I actually do agree with you, of course, but I also want to mention that I forgot about Edgar Allan Poe. How many movies have been made about him, and he's an exciting. There are romantic writers, Shakespeare. There's a ton of movies. Hey, send us your favorite author-inspired type movies. Send them in the comments. They're on YouTube, or we're also on Apple, and anywhere you can find a podcast. Send us your thoughts. Email us. Let us know what you think about your favorite movies that got your creative juices going. I do agree with you, of course, but I also think that I think that there's a bit of an opportunity to explore a lot of writers who have had an amazing romantic lives, and there's a bunch of, all the Russian writers are amazing. I've read stories about them getting into fights, and of course Ernest Hemingway, another writer who gets a lot of movies. There's just so many. There are a lot of writers whose life is bigger than life, and yet the cult of personality, it may not apply to every writer. Some writers have quiet lives. They have jobs. They do the A through Z of being a good parent and responsible person and all that boring stuff, but it's necessary to have a stable life and have that escape. I do feel that a lot of movies dramatize it in many different ways, and I liked Starting Out in the Evening because it dramatized the internal, I would say, I don't want to say struggles, but a lot of what writers are thinking about, especially toward the meaning of what we do. Is it banal? Is it really serious? Any artists questioning themselves, and it's a difficult life. You want that romantic success. We want it. This show is a lot about us trying to make it, trying to look for that. And the idea of fame, I personally don't care for it. I know that sounds funny, but I really don't. I'm here because pretty much Dan twisted my arm a lot of times into being a little bit more outspoken. I think that's a good idea. But otherwise, I would be a guy that's very, very happy in his corner desk, dreaming worlds and characters and storylines and getting into the nitty gritty of what I'm writing and enjoying, and not thinking about query letters and conferences and ways to maybe look into self publication versus traditional writing. I'm taking up a lot of space. I'm talking a lot because I like movies, and I know Dan. One of the things that Dan and I were childhood friends, really, and yes, we were once children. Just breaking news. And we used to talk about movies. Remember, Dan? So much. It was really a way that, we should have talked more about books, but we really talked a lot about movies. Movies are a great way to do what? To get into plot, to get into a lot about things in writing. What was it that excited you, or that still excites us about the movie business, and and then we can talk about screenwriting.
Yeah, well, you can see from my background that Star Wars was my childhood, and
Well,
it was the story of it. It was this, the combination of the story and the special effects, and it was just, the original trilogy was such an effortless narrative on screen. Like, it took the best of writing and cinema, and that perfect blend. What you can't capture in books is the visual element, but the visual element separated from a good story, nobody cares about. So, that definitely got my juices flowing as far as narration and imagination. And then, as a teenager, I really got into C.S. Lewis's Narnia books. Those were the ones that really made me want to be a writer. And then books like The Count of Monte Cristo just got me excited about writing stories of adventure. So yeah, so I mean, I don't really separate movies from books in terms of what inspires me as a writer. It's the same thing. When I'm thinking and writing, I'm thinking cinematically. But I have tried script writing.
tell us more about the cinematic thinking that you do.
What's that?
Tell us more about the cinematic thinking that you do. Just a little bit. What does that mean?
It needs to unfold in almost real time for me, the story. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do is texture the scene that is happening with multiple layers of the story going on at the same time. So I'm trying to do what the best script writers do, because when you're writing a movie and then you film a movie, typically you don't have voiceover going on the whole time. So typically it's not being narrated. You're interpreting the story, you're following the story based upon what's happening in front of you. I try to not intrude too much in my stories with what do you call it? With just narration. What's
writing.
The word I'm looking for? Well,
no, you bring a good.
You know what I'm saying?
There is such a thing as cinematic writing, and there are pitfalls to that. I've even used, depending on the project, if it's more of a genre like my novel Sage, I even use storyboards. I drew it. It really brought me into a whole level of different creative venues. So if people are out there and they're watching movies, and people mostly stream, there's a value to watching movies on DVD or Blu-ray still, because they have something called the special features. Now, The Godfather, I don't have it here to show you, but The Godfather is a great one to look at the special features. So is Apocalypse Now, because there's a ton of bonus content that you are not going to get on the streaming only. And in that content, you'll see and hear directors and producers and different creative people talking about the process. I drew a lot of learning. I have a lot of DVDs throughout 20 years. I don't buy as many anymore, but one of the things that drew me to it is that it kind of gives you an education into the creative thinking process that these ideas go filter through. And so you'll see storyboards, and those are pretty normal in filmmaking. A lot of what makes filmmaking very strong, very appealing, can also be not even tangential, but actually very strongly linked to a writer's creative process, a novelist. And I use a lot of those analogies in their creative, the way they solve certain creative problems, to look at it myself in different ways. I don't think cinematically as much. I am very visual, but I am more drawn towards a theme and character and stories. And for instance, in Star Wars, one of the things that stuck with me in the rest of it, like, whatever, but I love and it stayed with me all the way till now, is the student or the master student, master acolyte relationship. I saw it in The Matrix, first one, was one of the things that drew me so strongly to that movie and those movies. And it very quickly gets brushed away because, the movie's in a hurry to make him, to make Luke a competent Jedi. But I liked that, and it's something that I still, I liken it to father-son relationships. Of course, Star Wars is rich with these relationships. Thinking about movies and thinking about them thematically, and as a writer, looking at things, we have a different filter and different ways of absorbing things. So, of course, any create, not just movies. Don't limit yourself. Almost anything is a story or a storytelling. History books can be that way, even though they're nonfiction. Wonderful historians have this dimension that they add. Paintings can be that way. You're absorbed by a new world. Poetry is the same way. It's a small universe, a small cosmos. There are many, many ways. I'm excited about movies because I've always been excited about movies. Who's not a red-blooded American and not excited about movies? But I have a little surprise that I was going through in the nostalgia boxes that had a bunch of files in there of really old stuff 20 years ago, longer than that. Didn't know what I was going to find in there, but finally decided to look into it. By the way, people, word of caution, don't do this at home. Do not go into your nostalgia boxes because they may make you do things that you didn't think you were going to do, or they may make you very nostalgic. For me, that was December of 2022. It made me want to change my life because I was like, oh my goodness, look at all my grades and my old school papers and my old writings. And I was writing that story. I forgot about that. I was somebody. I was a little bit unchallenged in my job. I did love my job, my organization. I'm not bad mouthing them in any way, but I worked in government and had done it for almost 11 years at that point, and I wanted something different. And that nostalgia box led me to do a lot of crazy things like going into grad school, which really upended my whole writing habit. But in there, I found a little gem, a little known script by the one and only. Now I'll just cover the one part. Dan, that's still going by his not his stage name, but anyway, what do you think about this? What does this remind you of? Tell me your thoughts. What's the story about? The voyage script writer.
Yeah, no, it's a great story idea that my dad came up with when I was a teenager. And it focuses on, it's a historical epic focused on the fur traders, French fur traders, and the very volatile fur trade that was happening in between Minnesota and Canada. Great story. I love the story. I tried to turn it into a script because my dad at the time was he's a singer-songwriter, but he loves movies, and he started getting into movies. My dad's name is Jerry Allen, and so
great country singer, by the way. People check him out.
Yeah, he's in several movies, and he and I collaborated on a script. And the script, it didn't go anywhere. I never completed it. My lesson with script writing, if you are considering whether to turn a story into a script or a novel, go with the novel because you can actually do something with it. It's your vision, and you can actually produce it, publish it, make money off of it. Whereas with a script, I think your best scenario with is that somebody buys it because of the concept. They like the idea of the story, and you at that point, if you sell it and somebody buys it, it's theirs, and they are not going to leave it as is. A script, even from the most famous Hollywood script writers, they get rewritten on the spot. It's all about the director, and so if you feel sacred about your story, turn it into a novel, maybe, and then maybe
or wait 20 years. Clint Eastwood. This is what happens when you're podcasting. All of a sudden, you just cannot speak as a human being anymore. Clint Eastwood, legendary, mythical, my hero. Director, brilliant. Bought the script, little known script known as Unforgiven. Sat for about 20 years or something like that, gathering dust until it was ready to be made. So the trajectory can be a complete fluke. I mean, what's going to fall on someone like Clint Eastwood's desk? Unlikely. We're definitely not here, Dan, to be a wet towel in for someone's dream. But we're going to talk about ourselves. Would we write a script? What are the pros and cons? I don't think I would actually, but that's your deal. The only way I would do it, and I'm sorry I interrupted, you're ready to answer, is if somebody commissioned me to do it. For somehow I became a big shot, or maybe I rubbed elbows with the right people and was like, hey, write us a script, because I don't, it's already very hard, like you pointed out, to write novels and to do these kinds of very, very difficult projects. And at least they have a chance of being sold. Right? A script is a whole different beast. Where do you have to even be? Can you just be in Meatloaf, Nebraska, and sell some script somewhere? I mean, it's
I mean, anybody. I mean, I think your better bet is to actually write a script treatment. So you come up with the idea of the movie and of the script, and you try to sell that.
Nice.
I think it's not going to take you as much time, and if you've got truly an original idea, that's what you should do. Otherwise, if you think you've got a great book idea that would translate to film, write the book, and I would write it, put it out there, and if somebody notices it, somebody notices it. I just, if you want to be a writer, if that's the most important thing, write. And I would, if you want to try a script, I just talked to somebody who is starting their MFA, and they are totally now into playwriting and script writing.
May they rest in peace.
Well, yeah, it's tough. The thing that I like about playwriting is that you can actually do something with it on a local level.
Absolutely.
and add something to your community. I love local theater. I think that's a totally viable thing.
Great idea. Also, with scripts these days, you can buy. Heck, there's been movies that have been shot with an iPhone. You can have fun with a script, write a script, maybe produce it on a shoestring, maybe do a short or something like that. And again, we're not here to tell you don't write a script. We're gauging our own expectations because we're learning a lot about business, and we've got a long way to learn. And whatever we learn, we're going to share with you. One of the things is to kind of you really have to humble yourself, and it's good to be a dreamer. If you're 20 years old and like, I'm gonna be a scriptwriter, yeah, be a scriptwriter. I mean, you're 20. If you're 30-ish, you maybe want to be in the mix in Hollywood. Maybe that's where you want to be, or Paris, or New York, at least, or Rome, somewhere where the filmmaking gets done, because it's not going to be easy to not be, it's a communal project, script writing, anything. It's about the people that you meet, the people that you mix in with. So it's not as lonely as some other endeavors. Writing a script, I feel, people might think it's easy because they're small. What is it, about a minute per page, more or less? Yep. But for me, I never have dabbled into scriptwriter. It's never occurred to me. I'm not a scriptwriter. Do I think I could do it? I could only do it if I asked you, Dan, a lot of questions. I wouldn't do it unless it was something like I said, it was solid. I think there's a lot of technical things that one would have to know about filmmaking and dialogue. Obviously, writing plays is not exactly like writing scripts at all. Even the format is very different. So there's a lot of things that go together, but film and theater are, as an actress that I used to date a long time ago, back when I was in the college years in Colorado, and she would tell me no that, and she actually did get a little bit roles and became an actress, and she was amazingly talented. I'm gonna say her name because we've always haven't kept in touch or anything, but we left as very good friends. And I think her stage name is Renee Kelly. And she was in little shows. One show she was in what's the Texas Walker Ranger as the waitress. Now this is a really incredibly beautiful at the time, and I'm sure still now. But that's it. You put her in are you already order with her lines, literally. It's tough. It's tough, even an extremely talented person like her. She also wrote scripts, and she's produced a lot of things locally in Texas. But it's I like what you were saying, that if you're having planned to write something as an idea, boom, do that. Try to sell that. Just also know that here's the warning: you may come up with great ideas, and you sell these ideas pretty cheaply, and now you can't use those ideas for a novel that you might have wanted to do. Is that not something that we should be concerned
Yeah,
about?
that's a great point. Yeah, no, if you feel passionate about a story, just write it. And then if somebody wants to adapt it, that's something different. It really, I think, whether you become a screenwriter or a novelist, if you're really considering screenwriting because you love movies, I think you should really consider what you want to do for your day job. What you and I do for day jobs gives us enough time, at the bookends of a day and on the weekends, and maybe for me a little bit more in the summertime, to actually write. But if you want to become a filmmaker, a script writer, I would consider going into a field that involves filming in some way, videos, editing. I know I have friends back in South Dakota who became independent filmmakers, and their day job was running a local film studio that made most of its money filming commercials for local businesses. And so they said they had all the equipment they needed. So they had all the audio, all the cameras. So when they worked on their movies on the side on the weekends after hours, they had everything they needed. And that started off as they just as teenagers, they made this movie, this Indiana Jones movie, that was quite elaborate and involved a lot of their friends, and that just started their dream. And so they've got several movies that you can see on Prime and Netflix. Again, that works with their day job. If you don't have a day job that works with the movie career, that's going to be a struggle.
I agree. And one of the things that we'd like to do, and I'd like to do one day, is do a little documentary. I know that your dad and brother are working, and maybe your sister at some point will get involved in doing a movie about his music career, and as an inductee into the South Dakota Country Music Hall of Fame, which I think is just an amazing honor, and what an opportunity to be creative. Yeah, we're here to talk about expectations. So don't dampen your dreams because the hill may be really, really just a mountain, actually. But also negotiate with yourself and know how much time do you want to spend to learn a new skill, such as script writing, and what could come out of it. And if your expectations are just to do something fun with your friends and learn and start learning the rudiments of filmmaking and so on, go for it. I think so. If you want to make it in Hollywood, some of the things that I did casually read were involved. Well, you might want to move to Hollywood, and in fact, strongly suggested in one of the blogs that I read. And I don't know how I came across it, but I did. I think it was something about the challenges the challenges of selling a script or making it in Hollywood as a staff writer when you're, say, older than 30 something. Because they do take them very young. They talked about, if you want, maybe you're fresh off your MFA or fresh off of a literature degree or something like that, and you're just head off to California. Great, that's a good idea. But also, it's going to be, let's say, get taken on by a little show as one of the staff writers. I mean, that's an amazing thing. That could lead to the path of you eventually having a script being taken seriously by producers and other people. It's going to be a long road, and these staff, I love the description of the way that the work goes for them, because it's hours upon hours of these, depending on how big the show is, but let's say a genre show, it's meetings and collaboration and writing and rewriting on the spot. It's a whole different, very kind of guerrilla style type of writing is what I'd like to call it, because you're not going to be sitting there wondering and trying to plug all your lofty ideas and depth character. Who knows if that is going to make it? And bouncing off of other people's ideas. And I'm not describing it in a way that makes it sound unappealing. I think it can be incredibly appealing to a certain type of writer and a certain type of personality that I probably don't have. One of the screenwriters that I didn't even know had a podcast is coming up with one. I'll plug in his name later on, but he's the one that wrote a great movie, an amazing movie for me, which is called the Mothman Prophecies, because it's kind of a supernatural thriller, but he does all the elements so incredibly well. The writing is very rich, very good, a great example of just talented script writing. And but he's a person that's been at it for 30, 40 years, and he started young, and it's still an arena, and I'd like to call it an arena in which you have to have a lot of drive. Not that you don't as anything else, but you're going to be really business type driven into and you could watch Californication if you want to see some little snippets of cynical things, but I think that screenwriters sounds exciting to me. I don't think it's something that Dan and I are probably going to get into, other than it would be kind of a one-off. But I know Dan's really you're more the screenwriter, and I just this is not the only time we'll probably talk about screenwriting, because we want to bring in some other more level-headed people, maybe somebody that's been doing it for a while.
But if you are not even considering whether to become a screenwriter, there's a lot you can learn from movie writing. For example, the 3-act structure. You have to be really tight as a writer for a film, and they always have all scripts are written in 3 acts, and that can help you as a novelist, as a short story writer. And the other thing that they do, as far as the big epic stories that are the big epic movies, they typically follow the hero's journey, the archetypical hero's journey. The call to action, the innermost cave, the resurrection, the elixir. It's all there. So if you don't know the hero's journey, look it up. It's easy to find. It's the archetypical plot line of the hero, and Star Wars follows that intentionally. And sometimes movies, they don't even realize they're doing it because it's so ingrained in our cultural narrative. So anyways, there's a lot you can learn from script writing.
Absolutely. The expectations are going to be very different. Writing for the screen and writing for the screen in someone's mind, which is our milieu. That's what we do, Dan and I. We write for that mushy thing inside of everybody that creates the worlds that we just put a frame for through dialogue, through different illusions of reality. And if we can master that craft, and we're still getting better and better at it, I think, then we can have an effect. And for me, it's not just visual, but spiritual, thematic, philosophical, so many different layers. For me, the life of a novelist is one of the most rewarding. And I also would love the life of a screenwriter. Wouldn't be for me. I like to watch movies and not worry about what's going to be cut in the next scene.
Yeah.
But so this year I want to be optimistic, and even if the road is very difficult, I want to figure out with you, Dan, how to demystify the process and maybe take away that intimidation factor for the inevitable rejections, but to do the best pitches that we can craft, so that when we're selling our idea to an agent or someone for traditional publishing, that we've really done our very best to represent our work.
Yeah. And we both, my plan is to also query the novel that I'm wrapping up, and to try to get an agent, try to get it traditionally published at either a mid-sized or a large publishing house, see how that goes. You and I mean, if we were to make this, we've talked a lot about sports analogies. Right now, the score is 0. We haven't scored any touchdowns yet with any writing, but we're just kind of restarting that journey.
Anybody is going to experience a lot of lows, and so we've learned ways to cope with those lows. Even just learning about the process of trying to get published or self-published seemed at some points discouraging to me. I'm going to be transparent about that, but there's also some something going on that is hijacking ourselves when we think we're not going to make it. We've got to believe in ourselves, and we've got to hit it. We don't define our success in writing. At least I don't. I don't think Dan does either. Based on solely on whether we sell a book and that book gets published, because that book can also tank. We're focusing on the stories that we want to bring to people and develop a readership, have that communion with people, and really, for our sake, just realize our own potential as writers and as people who are just thinking creatively. That to me is the juice. That to me is the action, and that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, no, we're gonna write no matter what. All right, fellow hacks, let's hack until you make it. Till next time.